Welcome back to Ron's Radio Corner, and I just figured I would do maybe a quick video, giving a little update on some of the radios that I have featured in recent videos, or maybe some radios that I just happen to be using most or favoring at the moment. I'm doing this without my little table tripod, and just sort of set some of these up here. And the reason I did this is that Sony radio is actually plugged in and would be kind of a pain to move, so I decided not to. But here on the table, the first thing I want to talk about is probably, just because it's in the front and I'm going to pause and get rid of it, is probably the CC Radio Solar. So out of the cluster of radios that are here on the table, I've probably owned this one the longest. And my initial thoughts on this radio was it was a great radio. Really, it's a great radio. But it's $100, and I kind of felt that C. Crane had missed the mark. There's a few things that this radio doesn't have. Like, I wish it came in colors, and I wish it was water resistant. But other than that, I think this is an interesting little radio. It's almost, what does C. Crane want this to be? Is it an emergency radio? Because it is. It's got the hand crank and the solar panel. It's got a little flashlight. Is it a table radio? It really does do a pretty convincing job of being a decent table radio. It's got great reception. It's got good sound, the ability to kind of punch the sound up that makes it, a decent, table, kitchen radio, put on the windowsill, or a desk radio. So my initial thoughts was this was sort of an expensive radio for what it was, and maybe there were better options. I'd have to go back and watch my first review, but I'm pretty sure that was my thinking, that I really like this, but it was competing with a lot of other radios at this price point. That's all still true, but I will say I reach for this radio a lot. One, because it does such a great job at pulling in stations. Two, the digital display makes it easy to figure out what station you're on. Could this be better? Sure. I'm hard pressed to think exactly how. I guess I really think this could replace an alarm clock radio or something like that. But it really is a great radio, and one I probably don't utilize enough. It probably has features to it that I'm not taking advantage of. But it's a radio that, after getting to know it, my opinion is warmed, to the point where now I would be more apt to say, yeah, this is worth $100, for where originally I thought it was a great radio, but maybe there was, depending on what your needs were, there were other radios it was competing with. So let me pause. Okay, so now we brought this little guy in the forefront. This is the really simple Benz AM/FM pocket radio. It's got a belt clip on the back of it. This is a no frills radio, and the big thing on this was, and I'm not sure if it is today, but when I purchased it, and I have seen it even recently, selling for $5. Like $9.99. Here's a coupon. You're getting this for like $5. My thoughts on this really haven't changed. Todderbert has been doing these 30-day challenges, and I haven't participated, but when he started that, I said to myself I was going to try to use this for 30 days straight. And I haven't. There's been some days where I haven't turned on the radio or something, but in spirit I have. I've tried very hard over the last month or so to use this radio a lot, to make it a point to use this radio. And what I can tell you is, I think for a $5 radio, it's still pretty fabulous. It does a pretty good job of picking up stations, at least the stations I listen to. But I do find it's pretty selective. there is something about its build. It's pretty chunky. Um, I don't know if I'd call it chunky. It's pretty solid. That's kind of what I meant by chunky. That it's, it feels pretty solid. It's got, a strong build feel to it. Although I think the case looks like it might be 3D printed or something, but there's something about the speaker and how it's mounted in the case where you hear a little vibration, which is slightly annoying depending on what you're listening to. I tend to hear it mostly on talk radio, but of course I tend to listen to a lot of talk radio. So I still think, if you needed a radio and you really were scraping your wallet to figure out what you could afford, for $5, this will do it. I mean, you can keep up with your news, listen to music, use it as an emergency radio, use it in the garage, keep it on your desk. This would do it. Most of us probably can afford to spend a little bit more, then you're going to get a better sounding radio. So, and then I just noticed that Todderbert shared a post where the Prunus J166 can be had for $5.99. I'm trying very hard not to buy that because I don't need another radio, but for roughly the same price, that looks like a much better radio. If I end up buying it, we'll compare. So these two are sort of a pair. I recently just put up a video on the ATS-20 Plus where I'm getting this, I think someone described it as a chuffing sound. That's probably pretty darn accurate. And someone in the comments on that post put a pretty good explanation, which I agree. I mean, I think it is the power switch, and unfortunately I'm not the type of person who's going to tear this apart and bypass or replace the power switch. I will deal with it until I'm sick of dealing with it. Next to it is the Eaton Elite Executive. I just saw that Andre from SWL, mention his name and the radio falls. I noticed that Andre, okay, here we go. At SWL just posted about this radio and the fact that you can get it for around that $50 price point. Go watch his review. But this is why I shared this radio so shortly after I bought it, because the price was fantastic. The reviews I've read on this are fantastic. And if Eaton is simply blowing out stock because they're discontinuing this radio, or maybe coming up with a newer, better radio, and so this is obsolete, that is your gain, because it doesn't take away from the fact that this is a radio that is really highly regarded and recommended, and for this price point, it's an absolute steal. And that's why these two are sort of a pair here, because what I have found is playing around with this and then grabbing this, I can usually, give me a little time, a little tweaking, I can usually manage to pull in anything on this that I've pulled in on this. But it's the usability. And I mean, this is fun, and I think if you're radio geeky enough, this is definitely a lot of fun. But this is, I don't know, this is sort of like hopping into your Model T and having to crank start it and figure out how to do all the things to drive a Model T. This is like getting into, a modern car where you just turn the key and everything works. It's a great radio. It's got a great feel. The one drawback to this, which, there's a rule of thumb here that if you have a radio that you're not using, you should take the batteries out of it. I tend to leave the batteries in my radios and try very hard to cycle through all the radios, on a regular basis, so I don't have a radio that's sitting there with the batteries dying. What I found is the batteries that I put in to the Eaton have already needed to be replaced, and it's not because I've been listening to it a lot. I think it's just because something's running in the background all the time. So this is probably a radio if you're not using it all the time. You definitely want to pull the batteries out, or else they will be dead at some point. So yeah, go look at Andre's post on this guy. If you're looking for a shortwave radio on a strict budget, this is where I would go right now. Or if you're really, really on a tight budget, go look for the XH Data D219. As much as I like this, if you're paying 35 or 40 and, going up to 50 doesn't break your bank, it's worth spending the extra money for this, my opinion. So here we go. The Sony table radio, whose model number I don't remember. Okay, the Sony ICF-9740W. This is on top of a dresser in the bedroom, and that's mostly because I didn't have a better place to put it. It's a radio I don't need, but I liked, and I got it for a price I was pretty happy with, and it plays great, and it looks decent. Are the things about this radio, as I've had it now for a few months, that I don't like? So I will find, like, I listen to NPR a lot, and
until the government restarted collections, no matter who won the White House. Private education is a requirement to collect on
where this is sitting. Oh, there's one thing. Where this is sitting, I had a really tough time picking up this station, and it would be crystal clear if I stepped away from it, if I got close to it, that I was causing, I guess, some radio interference. So a few things. There's inexpensive FM antenna that I purchased off of Amazon. It comes with an adapter that uses the screw terminals in the back of this radio, and then that wire antenna plugs into it. And I just got that run up over a door frame and then kind of tacked so it stays in place. That seems to have made a difference. At first I tried to drape it down below, and it just didn't quite cut it. So that seemed to have made a difference. And this stays here, and I try to use this on a fairly regular basis. So what tends to happen is, once upon a time, I would grab one of my radios, and that radio would walk around the house with me in the morning as I got ready. Now, I have radios in different rooms, and I'm like turning radios on and off, or putting on 3 different radios until I'm done, and then I go around and shut them all off. And that's sort of where this sort of falls in. It's a great radio. It sounds great. I do kind of wonder if they, if Sony decided to make this today, if they changed the cabinet from, particle board with, that sort of veneer wrap over it to whatever Tivoli or Sangean is doing, and added Bluetooth to this, would this radio compete with those radios around the same price point? I do wish the dial was backlit. It can be a real pain to read sometimes, but other than that, it's a great radio, and I would say, if you're someone who's wanted a table radio and you've looked at Tivoli's and you've looked at Sangean's and you've said, I just don't want to spend that amount of money, which I did for a very long time. With the Sangean, I would say really prowl on Amazon, because I got mine at a heck of a good deal. But I picked this up for about, I don't remember now, $25? That might have been with the shipping. If you can get one of these at the right price, and particularly if you can find one local, and you can check it out, this might be a way to get a great sounding radio at a budget price. When I turned it on and turned it off, you heard that little bit of crunchiness in the volume knob. That had a lot of crunchiness in the volume knob, and I used a little contact cleaner and really got rid of most of it. And sometimes I will turn that off and there'll be nothing. There's just a little bit there at the end. So maybe a little more contact cleaners in its future. So now we're on the other side of the room, and this is the GE clock radio that I was gifted by a cousin. So this is the GE-74550D. So the problem with this radio is I don't really have a need for it. So right on the same little table, I have this, which is my battery-powered little Marathon, clock radio, which I love this thing. It's got a nice, gentle backlit face. Runs pretty quiet. I like analog. But I needed to put this someplace. And at first I just wanted to see if it worked. Well, since I plugged it in here, it's kept perfect time. I occasionally do turn it on. Awkward to do with one hand.
There's opportunities, but it's hard. It's hard to find an area like this that has been so dependent on oil and gas trying to transition to something else. Farmington has tried to diversify by promoting tourism and outdoor recreation.
It's a nice little radio, and it's funny. I've seen a few of these up for sale. Sometimes people are selling them for like nothing, and sometimes they're asking $20 or so. I saw one of these for $5 on Facebook Marketplace, and almost wanted to go buy it because honestly, even as old as this is, this is probably made in the early '80s. It does what you need it to do. This, even today, this would be a perfect bedside companion. If you needed to wake up to music, if you just wanted to play music, if you just needed a clock, it'd be great. In an office, if you just wanted a clock in there, and here's a radio, or maybe in the kitchen, if you had wanted to put this on a table or something like that. It's a really nice radio, and it sounds pretty decent. I mean, I don't think it compares to that Sony, but for the type of listening that I tend to do, I think it's perfectly adequate for talk radio and maybe a little bit of music. The reception is good, but there's been times where I thought to myself, well, I'll listen to something, at night, and some of the channels I try to pull in, this really won't pull in some of the distant ones. And that's a little frustrating, because conveniently it's here, but I probably could grab my C crane and pull in those channels without much problem. Okay, so last but not least, here's the Sangean H-201. So this is really a radio that I'm like, what are they going for? This is supposed to be a shower radio, and it is a shower radio. It's waterproof. At least it's built that way. I haven't submerged it. I bought it because where it sits here in the bathroom, things can get a little steamy, a little moist, word everybody loves, and I didn't want to put a regular radio in here and have it get ruined. I picked this up secondhand at a great price, and it was in very nice shape. So, few things. This has probably become the radio that I use the most, because I tend to put on news, maybe music, as I get ready in the morning, and listen to broadcasts. So this goes on. I might only be listening to it for like 10-15 minutes, but it's 10-15 minutes about 5 times a day. On the weekends, my routine changes a bit, but I really love this radio. If I have any complaints about this radio, is instead of the wire antenna that it comes with, right, let me grab that. Right, instead of that wire antenna, I wish it had some sort of solid rubber mast antenna that popped out of the back of this or something, or some other clever thing, because then it's a radio that I would really consider like buying for my father, because it's easy to read, it's easy to use, the nice big buttons, and
I wanna be in the same space.
help me,
Like I wanna have something that I can trade in.
I tend to have this turned up kind of loud, because if you're showering or something, You need the volume up enough to get over the noise of the shower. So one of the things I love about this, nice big easy to read display. Um, this works on D batteries. I think it's 2D batteries. And you can see, well, I don't know if you can see, but I'm down to 1 bar. That has been pretty much 1 bar since I got the radio. And I keep waiting to see when the batteries are just going to die on this. I actually took the batteries out and I tested them recently with my battery tester. And even though it says 1 bar, the batteries are hardly in the, dead range. They're just sort of like in the, it's a cheapy battery tester, but they're like in the yellow range. Um, so this has got a great sound. It doesn't need to be relegated to the bathroom as a shower radio. I mean, this really could be used as a table radio. You could go put this out on the porch and have a radio to listen to there, and knowing that if it rained the next morning or something like that, this thing isn't going to get ruined. This would work in the kitchen. It's got pretty good reception, at least for the locals. I mean, I'm not using this to just sort of see if I can pull in, stations from hundreds of miles away, um, but then it's the Swiss Army knife of radios. It's got weather band and weather alert, and it's got a flashlight kind of stuck there, which seems comical. I mean, what did they make this radio for? But I have to be honest with you. Right now, Tom from Tom's Radio Corner has been running some videos about emergency radios, and I have a few radios that are emergency radios, sold as emergency radios, hand cranked, the whole bit. I think in a lot of ways, this could be my favorite emergency radio. I mean, it's weather alert. It's got a flashlight. It's waterproof, which most of my weather radios, maybe none of my weather radios or emergency radios are, except for this one. Um, those D batteries give it a really long battery life. Um, it's amazing. I was thinking about this morning that I have a few radios that run on D batteries, and I could plug them in like my Super Radio 3. I don't know if I'd bother. I mean, they just run forever on the D batteries. Um, so that's it. Little quick walkthrough. Let's pause this again. We'll go back here. But a little quick walkthrough. Um, just some of the radios that I have been maybe using the most over the last month or so, and some follow-up thoughts on them. If I had any negative thoughts on any of these, it's probably the Benz, only because if you can get the Prunus J166 for pretty much the same price, it sort of defeats buying that one. Although I like it, I think it's a very usable radio. It's just, I think the Prunus may be better. Like I said, trying hard not to buy that one, but if I do, we'll do a comparison. So maybe a little longer than I expected, but I think we covered a lot of different radios in this one and talked a little bit about them. So thanks for watching. Till next time.